Tomorrow Thinking.
Your name is Baroness Ruth Hunt of Bethnal Green.
I was put in by Theresa May when she was exiting as Prime Minister, and she asked me to join the House of Lords.
There's this expression, old white man.
There are white men with diverse experiences and ways of living and ways of seeing the world. I really like lifting weights 3 times a week. And there's a gym in Parliament. I go in the morning, usually at the same time as the security guards. So the security guards who are all buff and built to break your neck with their finger, and me. The far right trades on othering and rejecting people as other in order to make everybody else feel like they belong. I don't think there is politics without art. I don't think there is humanity without art. I think that we have to find ways of enabling young people to experience that creativity in whatever way.
Today I'm very pleased to welcome Baroness Ruth Hunt of Bethnal Green. Ruth is one of the most visible voices in the British and European debate on inclusion, equality and diversity. From 2014 to 2019, she was the chief executive of Stonewall, Europe's largest LGBTQ+ organization, and in 2019 she was elevated to the House of Lords, where she sits as an independent crossbench peer. Today she co-leads Deeds and Words, a consultancy for values-driven change in organizations. And since 2024, she has also represented the United Kingdom in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe in Strasbourg, where she is a full member of the Committee on Culture, Science, Education and Media. Ruth, it's wonderful to have you here. Right now you're in Strasbourg for the European Assembly and you're not far from Baden-Baden, so we are very lucky that we could catch you.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here. I didn't realise that Baden-Baden was so close to Strasbourg. So the Council of Europe is meeting next week, and when Michael said, could you come and be part of this event? I was like, well, if the timing works, and it did. So it's fantastic to be here and be here with you.
Great. You might come back?
I will come back. Yeah, I love I love the Roman baths. I went last night.
Yeah.
And I have a soft spot for affordable spa spaces with hot rooms and cold rooms. And I like your no textile approach in Germany. It's not a British thing. We're very pro textiles in Britain.
Germans again.
Yeah. It's lovely here.
And, it's called Friedrichsbad. It's beautiful, ancient, dome-like building from 1900. You're talking about, right? There's 14 stations with hot steam rooms and different hot springs coming directly out of the hill, right in the pool.
It's amazing, and some very cold springs.
And cold springs as well, exactly.
And it's a lot like there's a similar baths in Bethnal Green that is underneath an old building that everybody in the East End goes to. Like, it's not posh, it's not white dressing gowns and champagne. It's tattoos and swimming costumes. So it's great. I really love it.
Kind of a contrast as well, probably.
Yeah.
You know that I was brought up on that hill. Our family house is just on top of that path. So this is in Germany you say Heimat.
Your home.
Exactly. Well, Heimat is more a word for a home, a feeling of being at home.
We have a word in Wales, hiraeth.
Hiraeth?
Hiraeth means a warm feeling of, it's more than nostalgia. It's a belonging and a almost visceral, guttural feeling about a place that you feel more when you leave. So when you live there, you're a bit more whatever. But when you leave, hiraeth is the sense you feel for the place that you once were.
Beautiful. So you were grown up in Cardiff. And what was your upbringing like?
It was my parents both. My mum went to university very late, so she originally trained to be a nurse and then a midwife, and then did a teaching qualification, then did a master's, then did an MBA, then did a PhD. So eventually became a professor of nursing and midwifery, but all done around me and my brother. And my dad was a jobbing architect, so didn't go to university. So me and my brother were brought up to really work very hard at school. Like, we needed to not waste a single opportunity of education, and that we had to go to university, and that we were going to work very hard. So strong work ethic, not a lot of money, very unpredictable money. So hard going, but not terrible. Do you know what I mean? So very kind of new middle class. I mean, we would have described ourselves, in Britain, class is very important, so we would have described ourselves as middle class. But now looking back, I realise that we were struggling to be middle class. You know, we managed to keep the payments going, but only just. Whereas I think that I'm now obviously much more middle class, but I think growing up, I didn't realise quite how hard it was to just keep going, I think.
So you think that had an impact on your life?
Certainly had an impact on my work ethic. So we would never miss a deadline. We did our homework way in advance. Me and my brother both had little tables to do our homework on and our colouring. So there was very much don't waste opportunities. And both me and my brother did English first, and then he decided to be an actor and earned no money for a decade. And then at 39, retrained to be a doctor. And he's now just finished his medical training, and he's got 2 little kids under 5. So we work hard. You know, I think we don't realise, we haven't yet realised you don't have to work hard. Like, we are still, and my mum and dad are retired, but they still work hard. Hard
it's like
work.
a family attitude.
Yeah.
Keep on going.
Keep on going.
Yeah.
No skiving. No nip into the Roman baths the night before you're doing an event here. So you know, I've worked very hard to try and introduce a bit of balance, but our ethos was not like that.
Work-life balance is also work.
Yeah.
Right? You have to force yourself.
Absolutely.
So you were a young woman or a girl probably when you found out you're a lesbian. How was that?
Well, I was too young, really. So I realised I was a lesbian in 93 when I was 13. And I was at a school that had far more boys than girls, just because of the school. And it was a school that specialised in training boys to be international rugby players. Rugby is a big sport in Wales. So there were a few clever girls, but mainly boys. And my mum and dad were very worried. They were really worried that... 93 was a different time. HIV was dominant. We also, in the UK, had something called Section 28. And Section 28 was a piece of legislation that prevented the promotion of homosexuality in schools. So schools, local authorities, public sector couldn't talk about gay issues and couldn't promote it as something that was a viable option. And any positive portrayal was banned. So books were banned from schools, TV programmes, there was nothing. So in 93, I didn't have much to draw on, and I went to Cardiff Library, and there was a gay section in Cardiff Library in the adult section, and I read the books. And I read The Well of Loneliness and Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit. And those 2 books are very depressing.
Okay, not such a good story.
They're pretty miserable stories, do you know what I mean? Like, there just wasn't much joy. Like, these days, the kids have got Heartstopper, and they've got, there's a lot of really joyous presentations of queer life. In 93, there wasn't much. It was pretty tough going. And in that context, my mum and dad thought that I was going through a phase, that it would pass, but I would close a lot of doors for myself by being gay, and that my teachers had all said I was clever and I could go to university, and I was jeopardising that by being gay. So it wasn't an easy conversation or time.
Also, if there was on the legal side and from the social side, this whole aspect that it's wrong how you are, difficult feelings.
Yeah.
I can imagine it's a feeling which hurts and also a long time and ongoingly, right?
Yeah, it's you have to work very hard.
Yeah.
I decided that I would be a head girl. Do you have head girl in Germany and France? So in schools, the leaders in a year at the end of school get elected to be a head girl or a head boy, and it's a kind of it's a responsibility. You're kind of the leaders of the school community.
Okay.
So I decided to be head girl of every institution I belonged to. So kind of was head girl of my school, and then changed school and was head girl of that school, and then became president of my college in Oxford, then president of the Students' Union. So I kind of have decided at that age to make sure there was more to me than that. So if the world was going to reject the gay, I needed them to know there was a lot more, and that the thing they should know is that I'm a baroness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a head girl,
that
right?
came a little later.
Right, so, but it's the same story.
You made your career, but yeah, it's the same,
So it's
same
the same
vibe.
story,
Yeah, obviously.
same vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And recently I've thought, did I even want to be head girl? Like, I'm quite shy. I'm quite introvert. I like my own company. So I don't know if I ever wanted to be head girl, but I'm 45 now, and I've done the gig a few times in different places. So
Maybe you need challenges and it's just your destiny. And maybe you're also lucky and you're working hard. So when was your coming out?
I think it was a gradual, ongoing process. But when I was 16, we moved from Cardiff to a place called Birmingham, which is in the middle of England. And I went to a new school, went to an all-girls state school, but it was a grammar school, which in the UK means that you have to pass a test to get in. You have to be clever to get in. And it was a big school. And I was out from day one. So I pretended that I'd been completely out and cool for decades. Do you know what I mean? As a 16-year-old, I was like, yeah, I'm a kind of completely established lesbian. So I had my jeans and my, haircut and all this kind of stuff. And started going out on the scene in Birmingham. So I think from the age of 16, there was nowhere where I wasn't out, if that makes sense.
Mm. Okay, so it was like slow manifestation.
I think 13 to 16, yeah. But at 16, it was everybody.
When it was set and everybody knew it, how was your feeling after that? Did it change anything in your heart, in your stomach, in your guts, in your feelings?
No, I think so. I think it was. I think there was still fear. So I think that there was no way I couldn't have been out. There's no way I could have been someone who I wasn't. But there was also a lot of fear there. But I was writing for a lesbian magazine called Diva, so I was writing articles. I'm so precocious, right? But they were paying me, so I was getting these checks for £400, and was putting them in my instant saver kids' bank account. Do you know?
With 16 is a lot of money.
Do you know what I mean? So I had this cash, and lived the life of Riley. So I think it's not a British phrase. I lived a good life. You know, I think I enjoyed the town, I enjoyed the scene, I enjoyed meeting girls. I somehow managed to get my schooling done, but I could have easily gone off the rails, I think. Mm-hmm. So I was just about on the right side of keeping the work going and but having a good time. So from that sense, I was much more free, but was further and further away from home. You know, I didn't really look to home for any kind of belonging at that stage.
You were very young, an activist, and this all unfolded into a political career. Could you share how that journey went?
And I think the politics, I think all activism is political. And I think that my activism was always present. So I went to an all-girls college at Oxford, and we campaigned to keep it single-sex. But we also had a film crew with us for 3 years of my degree from Channel 4, which is quite an arty channel in the UK. And this TV company spent 3 years with us, filming 6 girls to make a series called College Girls that came out on a Sunday night at 9 o'clock. Very nice, all filmed on film, so kind of exquisitely looking. So I began to understand how you bring people with you and how you persuade people to do things, I guess. So became but there's lots of different ways of describing that: policy, research, campaigning, so all that kind of stuff. So when I joined Stonewall at 24, as a little baby policy officer, I thought I was generating policy. I didn't really see it as activism. Then over the 15 years I was at Stonewall, did a huge amount of different ways of influencing and different ways of campaigning, of which politics was one strand that I didn't do much on, really, because politicians are one group of influencers. So it came as a surprise to me when I was asked to join the House of Lords, because I think I'd always made the decision as a student to not do party politics. So in Oxford in 98, 99, Labour had just got in, so the student Labour movement and the student Conservative movement were very prominent, and I didn't feel particularly drawn to either of them. So even then I was a kind of crossbench independent. So I didn't consider myself political in that sense. But now I'm in the Lords, in a way I still don't consider myself a politician, really, although of course I am. I consider myself an activist.
Sympathetic. You mentioned Stonewall, which is an organization, UK, big organization, and you became CEO later. What is Stonewall?
It's a less big organisation now because the culture wars have yielded its damage quite significantly. So Stonewall was in the UK. It was set up by Ian McKellen, who's an actor, and Michael Cashman and Lisa Power and others, to counteract Section 28, so this piece of legislation that prevented the promotion of homosexuality in schools. So it was set up to be a very centrist movement for civil liberties and change for LGBT people. And when I became CEO in 2014, same-sex marriage had just been passed in the UK, and I signalled that we should start working on trans issues. So unusually for an LGBT organisation, we didn't do trans. We did lesbian, gay and bi. And globally, that was very out of kilter. In the UK, it was very out of kilter. It was very noted that we didn't work on trans issues. And so I advocated very strongly that Stonewall should start advocating on trans issues. But I think we were about 10 years too late in doing that. And it coincided with a significant and forceful opposition to that around 2000. Certainly by 2020, there was much more opposition to that.
In public perception, you are sometimes labeled as a radical activist, while you describe yourself more as a conservative in many ways.
I think I'm much more establishment than people think. I think what I've realised is that social media and media in general reduce you to whatever suits the narrative. And my advocacy for trans people and their inclusion was very mainstream in 2014, 15 and 16, even 2017, but 18, 19, 20, 21, it became more radical. So who I am hasn't changed, and I don't think my ways of working or my positions have changed, but society's acceptance of what counts as mainstream has changed. And to a certain extent, trans people have been the canary in the coal mine. Is that a phrase? That's kind of the first warning we got that there was a pushback, and we certainly saw that in the US. It's happened in Germany, actually, this kind of, you introduced legislation that I was advocating for in the UK, and then there's been a kind of reluctance about that and a pushback about that in Germany and a kind of resist. So what was a trajectory of acceptance was kind of halted in its tracks. And I think certainly LGBT things were the first to come on that. And interestingly, in Italy, they don't talk as much about trans, but they do talk about how important it is that lesbians have babies, right? So it's all about women having babies and being at home and things like that. So that it's all part of the same discourse, in my view. So I think I stayed pretty static, but the world around me shifted quite considerably. And I didn't anticipate that as much as I should have done.
Do you think that the pendulum has been swinging from the left to a more far-right situation right now? And you think it's going to swing back, or it's going to be stuck for a while?
I don't know, and I wish someone did know, because then we could prepare better. I think I think the pendulum is in danger of breaking, is my current fear. I think that there's always been swings back and forth, and I remember in the 90s in the UK there was a discussion about political correctness gone mad, and like there's always been a pushback and a reaction to. And there's something about inclusion, and it's a little bit like socialism in that both inclusion and socialism asks you to give up something in order for someone else to have something, in the most simplest form, right? True inclusion, someone has to give something up in order to share that power, that wealth, that whatever it is, something has to shift. And I think in times of poverty, austerity, job shortages, housing shortages, food shortages, water, that tendency to think kindly about other people diminishes. And I can't see the world's resources shifting enough for us to feel comfortable enough again to be generous. So I think the advent of AI, I think that we're going to see quite a major impact on the middle classes who are going to struggle to get work in the same way. Most countries don't have a universal basic income system that will sustain that, so more and more people are going to be angry. And we're seeing generations of people who have less than their parents did. And post-war, every generation has had more than their parents did. So in that context of diminishing returns and a sense of outrage about that, there is no capacity for inclusion, and no capacity for taxation, and no capacity for migration. And all those things are conspiring, I think, to break the pendulum.
You are not the only one expert manifesting that idea. This week in the last talks, I heard similar ideas, perspectives. It's a little spooky, right?
Yeah.
How were you proposed as a member of the House of Lords?
For your listeners who don't know, the House of Lords is our second chamber in the UK. So we have the House of Commons, which is made up of MPs, and they are elected by their local population, and the majority of those MPs form the government and they set legislation. The House of Lords is our second chamber, and it used to be populated by people who owned land, so their titles would pass from generation to generation down the male line. That changed 30 years ago, and Tony Blair introduced what's known as people's peers. So people can apply to become into the House of Lords or are put into the House of Lords by Prime Ministers. So there are lots of ex-MPs on the party benches and things like that. And I was put in by Theresa May when she was exiting as Prime Minister, and she asked me to join the House of Lords.
So with that, you become a Baroness. And your name is Baroness Ruth Hunt of Bethnal Green. Why Bethnal Green? I know that name from a subway station, I think, in London.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
So it's a pretty famous name.
You need a place if there's more than one of you. So in the olden days, there wasn't multiple Hunts, right? Because it was Cromwell and Spencer and like kind of landed gentry. Now there are a couple of Hunts and a couple of Joneses and a couple of, so you have a thing at the end to differentiate you from the other Hunts. And you choose wherever you want. And I could have chose someone in Wales, but I live in Bethnal Green. And Bethnal Green is a part of East London that saw off the black shirts, kind of the Jewish communities and the white working class communities came into the streets and fought off fascists back in the day. It's a massively migrating, transient location, significant Muslim population. It would never have a baron or a lord of Bethnal Green because the land is too bombed and too scarred and too hodgepodge. And I go to church there and I live there and I like it there and it's kind of my home. So I wanted to put Bethnal Green on the map.
So you were able to choose yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty funky name. There's this expression, old white man, which was around a few years ago and I think triggering a few people. Do you know how that phrase came up and what it stands for exactly and what has been its effect on society?
I think I don't know its origin. There's a phrase in English which is pale, male, and stale. Have you heard that? kind of the equivalent of old white men. And it was the assumption that old white men, or those who are pale, male and stale, were the problem, and that everybody who wasn't that was the solution. And it served to create shame, I think, in a community that are not generic or universally alike or the same thing. And it denied the fact that there are white men with diverse experiences and ways of living and ways of seeing the world that enables them to be part of the conversation about what inclusion looks like. So I found it then, and I find it now, a lazy, dismissive shorthand way of trying to other groups. And we know that that's how oppression happens, right? We just other groups. And I can understand that groups who have been oppressed turn that out, but I don't think it's ever worked. So I don't think it's served on this occasion either.
In my opinion, it didn't really serve. I think it created a reaction which came back massively. And also, I think it's segregating to say this. So it's the same technique as the other side. It's obviously not helpful, just not working, like violence doesn't work in any direction. So I think this was the beginning of the pendulum swinging back. People got pissed and said, like, I am a little older, I'm white, so maybe I'm a feminist, why do you put me in the cliche?
Yeah.
It's just not working.
And I think it became part of the discourse about how you're part of the problem, and if you don't know you're part of the problem, it's because you're not aware. You can't win in that mental loop. And so it just creates anxiety, and that anxiety and fear about saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, not understanding your own position or power in the world just becomes immobilizing. And there's two reactions to that. One, you kind of stay immobilized, or two, you reject the thing that's immobilized you. And the rejection of the thing that's immobilized you was going to happen with quite a big forceful shove. And fewer people changed how they were, but the balance had to be reset. So that's what's happened. I just think it's more than a rocking of a pendulum. Mm. And I think that over the last kind of 6 decades, there has been different ways to highlight how oppression manifests itself in society. This was the latest method, technique. Very few have worked, actually. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, to what extent has feminism achieved what feminists intended? So if I look at the UK, the vote was secured in the UK, yes, because of the suffragettes, and because of the war, and because of how women suddenly had to work, so they had money, so they had influence, so they paid taxes. Nothing's simply one thing, is what Virginia Woolf says, and I think it's really important to not overestimate the impact of progressive activists and civil society actors in the past, nor overestimate the causation of where we are now on some of this stuff. I think there's always been mess in some of these things. I think that this has been quite a substantial reassertion of power in a context of shortage and poverty. And it more of a concern is why people don't feel like they belong, why they don't feel like they have purpose, why they don't feel like their kids are going to be better off than they were. All those things are the things we need to pay attention to, rather than worrying too much about what tactically what might have been disrupted.
Yeah, but the far right is using the fact that maybe the diversity work went a little too far. But I think it's useful to go a little too far. My dad always said, exaggeration makes you more perceivable, was one of his main sayings. And I think it's true. At a certain point, you need to be a little louder to fight for your rights. And then normally it gets back into normal in the mass perception of things, of our culture. But in this case, it just has been instrumentalized by the far right and still ongoing. And I'm wondering how far that's going to work.
And I just wonder whether if it wasn't this, it'd have been something else. So I don't disagree with your analysis, but I wonder if If gay people were rich and straight people were poor, then I think the homophobia would have been more the vehicle of the far right. I think that the far right trades on othering and rejecting people as other in order to make everybody else feel like they belong. And so the tool is the woke or the EDI but it would have been something else. And I think it will be other things soon. So it won't always be trans. So in the UK, Reform has said nobody should come on small boats to the UK. Yes, last week Nigel Farage said anyone with indefinite leave to remain should leave. That is quite a far cry, right? So single men coming on boats and washing up on our shore should be sent back. People with indefinite leave to remain are our plumbers and our cleaners and our teachers and that's a different thing. So I think these things have been tested. And to be able to say, well, I've been told in my diversity training that I'm the problem, absolutely was unhelpful and tactically wrong and strategically misplaced. But I don't think it's the cause of what we're seeing now. I think it just is the thing that has been put into the hopper.
Absolutely, it's just a tool.
Yeah.
It's a tool for populism.
And I think what I've learned is that we should absolutely reflect on what we should have done differently and what we should have said and what we shouldn't have said. But I think that also denies it gives us too much power as minority communities. Like we didn't create the right. Like the far right were there. They've always been there. We didn't help, but we didn't create it. And sometimes the narrative suggests that if diversity initiatives hadn't been quite so, then the far right wouldn't exist.
I think that it's a very simple thing. You fight for your right to be a human being, and everyone deserves that. No more to say to that, in my opinion. So nothing wrong with it. You created, with your partner, a consultancy called Deeds and Words. What's the meaning behind this name?
So a famous slogan of the suffragettes in the UK was deeds, not words.
Okay.
And deeds, not words meant enough words. Now we should see action. And me and Caroline are always of the view that you need both deeds and words. So it's a recognition of that movement, but also a recognition that you don't change things unless there's things that you do and things that you say, and that conversation and discourse is vital if it's going to be part of the thing that changes how we work and how we are. So the word "and" is possibly the most important word in our name.
But it's interesting that you put deeds before words. Because normally most of the time it's the opposite. First strategy, then making. I mean, in economy, it's like that.
I guess because the suffragette slogan was deeds and words, deeds not words.
Yeah,
so we
that's
probably,
why.
we probably, and in the Bible actually, it's deeds not words. It's not words, not deeds. So historically, it's deeds and, but I don't think we gave it that much thought, to be honest.
Do you want to tell me what your consultancy is doing?
Well, we were working. We had a big business. Now I primarily am in the House of Lords, so I do some very selective work through Deeds and Words with special clients, if you like, who are anxious and keen to change the way cultures are working within their organisations through conversation and through finding ways that work with the staff that they have. My partner Caroline has actually moved to an organisation called Men's Sheds, and Men's Sheds is a Australian movement actually, and it's a campaign movement that men set up a shed. It's a shed. Shed is a British concept. A shed in Britain is a place where men go and do DIY and build things and fix things, and it's a quiet space to be creative. And so what happened in Australia and now in the UK and in Canada is that men are setting up sheds, and there are about 1,000 in the UK, and they're run voluntary, tiny little places, and men come together and build things and fix things. And Caroline thought that it was the answer to men's isolation and loneliness and ostracization from society. So she's doing that. That's her, because she used to work in HIV, and I do deeds and words kind of 1 or 2 days a week with very special special clients.
I love this idea of the shed.
Yeah, it's nice.
It's really nice, very very simple and beautiful image. And the idea is to put men together. That's it. Yep. Instead of being their dopamine craze.
It's kind of, it's deliberately simple. So it's not a health intervention. It's not a stop drinking service. It's not a prostate cancer check system.
Is it a drinking party?
But they end up talking about drinking and prostates and mental health. So the objective is to come and build. And it's the phrase is shoulder to shoulder. So you stand shoulder to shoulder with the men in your community and fix stuff.
Is that a franchise concept? Is this a company, or is that more like NGO? How is that to understand?
NGO. So in Australia, it's mainly funded through government, actually. In the UK, a shed sets itself up. So the problem in the UK is finding a venue, because you want electricity and power tools and benches and workstations. So Caroline in her organisation helps men set up these sheds and find the health and safety policies and things like that. It's cute.
It is. I can imagine myself like in 10 years going to a shed, meeting other men.
You'd love it.
Building stuff.
They fix things. And the shed does what the people want to do. So there's one shed in Ireland where they fix cars, and people bring along their old cars and they tinker with them. So that was Caroline's answer to what's happening in the world, and my answer was to spend all my time in the Lords, because the Lords, you have to be there right now, I think.
The Lords, and also you represent the UK in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe in Strasbourg. Mm-hmm. How come you're in a European institution after Brexit?
It's a good question. So we left Europe, but the Council of Europe was set up after the war by Winston Churchill and others to bring together all those who shared what were then described as European values of peace and human rights. So 43 member countries come together as part of this delegation, and Britain has 30-odd representatives in that space. And you go according to your political, the majority. So because Labour's in power at the moment, the majority of our delegates are Labour, and they are very keen on building relationships with Europe. So this is our way of building relationships across Europe in this, because we are still part of the European Convention on Human Rights. We are still accountable to the European Court on Human Rights. So they're not part of the European Union in that traditional sense. But it is another bone of contention in UK politics.
Do you guys think you're going to come back to our party?
I don't know. It's outside my power. I think that I think it depends on what happens politically. So at the moment, there are calls for us to come out of the European Convention on Human Rights. But I think that as hostilities increase across the globe, us being outside tents feels very, very short-sighted. But that isn't in my power, I'm afraid.
I wish you come back. I miss you.
We miss you.
Now we come to a little bit more personal questions. I like asking people who are so prolific and so prominent and so relevant and so full of responsibility, what are their life hacks to stay grounded and effective?
I think I don't always do this well, so I've had to learn. But I really like lifting weights 3 times a week. And there's a gym in Parliament. And the MPs and their staff, who are all quite young, go in the evening. And the Lords, because we don't sit till 2 o'clock, so we sit afternoons and evenings. I go in the morning. usually at the same time as the security guards. So the security guards who are all buff and built to break your neck with their finger, and me, we hang out, and they help me lift. So I do that. I have beautiful godchildren, so I don't have children myself, but I decided to be the adult that I needed in kids' lives. So I think everybody needs adults who are not their parents, and so I spend a lot of time with them.
So you're not going to be able to pass on your title?
Women can't anyway. Women can't do any of that, and life peers don't. So it stays with me till I die.
It's a shame, such a cool name is said. That's a question from my heart. So what role do culture and art play in societal, economic and democratic change?
Well, I'm an English graduate, so I read all the time. I've just read all the book and long lists, and I wouldn't be anywhere without literature. I have a tattoo on my back with a quote from Julian of Norwich in the original medieval English, which talks about, anyway, that's a whole other story, Julian of Norwich, and I have Virginia Woolf, and I have a new tattoo from an artist by Nigel Hall, who works a lot with sculptures, but he also drew spirals, and I'm interested in how the centre falls away from spirals and how they maintain. So I don't think there is politics without art. I don't think there is humanity without art. I think that we have to find ways of enabling young people to experience that creativity in whatever way that looks and feels for them. And I think in economic uncertainty, there is a drive to deprioritise that, and something is missing from our souls if we don't have an outlet for that. It's why Caroline loves sheds, right? Because that's beautifully creative. So art and the art of rhetoric and the art of connection is integral to politics.
Yeah, it's the soul and the identity of our countries and of our populations and our cultures. I think that needs to be pushed in all areas of society, from economics to politics to science. It's crucial. It's what I try to do with my work since quite some years. I will take the opportunity to speak about one of my artworks, but I'm not going to describe it because my wife, who is a curator and knows my body of work pretty good, Jana van Helling, she will introduce.
We're talking about the work Truth is Capital by Johann Alexis. He's using pigment and binder as technique, and you are in front of this huge red painting, and it's basically a red surface you're diving into. Only when you take a second look, you recognize the words written on it in red letters. Truth is capital. So it's red letters on a red surface, meaning you're more sensing those words than you actually see them. The words don't involve a specific meaning. They're open to interpretation of each viewer, and the artist himself generates those words during a state of meditation.
Baroness, can I ask you what you think of my artwork?
I think it's incredibly powerful piece of work, and I think what I've been pondering about since you sent it to me is the hidden ambivalence of truth and the use of capitalization on capital, but the small letters on truth is almost the submission of truth to capital is something that I've been reflecting on. And I think that I said it earlier, Virginia Woolf says, "For nothing was simply one thing." I think that there's something about truth that is not one thing. I think we think that truth is one thing to everyone. And of course, truth is subjective as well. And it's capital if you have the power, and it ceases to be a form of capital if you have no power. So that juxtaposition of both the wording, the font you've chosen, and its submission and submersion into the colour is what I was left with, thinking that these are complicated and complex ideas.
It's a vessel, it's a proposition to think about, and I didn't have a fixed meaning for that those three words. I just pulled them out of meditation, so they're from my subconscious. But I'd like to speak about this work in context of your work, because I think truth has something to do with the fact that we are human beings and that we are born a certain way, and that God or creation made us like that, and that's it. And it's very simple and not complicated, and there's nothing to discuss about it. I was so surprised when it came up at a certain point in my life. I thought so many things are already fixed, you know. When I was raised up in a European family, open-minded and in well-informed subcultures, and I'm surprised that human beings are still questioning truth. And also, I think it's important to know that truth is an evidence. And every evidence helps you to grow. So if you learn something, you see something, you understand it, and then you make a capital out of it by acknowledging and accepting, and by being challenged maybe, but in this case maybe to see it's the true beauty of creation and of the sun and the hills and the universe and the body of every human being and the soul. And that's capital, you know. So that's what I see, and I am very thankful for this discussion with you.
Thank you.
I would like to close here because I'm almost crying.
Bless you.
Thank you, Baroness Ruth.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Talk soon.
Tomorrow Thinking with Johann Alexis. A podcast developed in the context of the BBUG Fellowship. Producer, Malcolm Gumpf. More podcasts and info at tomorrow-thinking.com.